From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm Vasilios. That is Sean Fazan. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review. You can find us wherever you listen to and now watch your podcasts on our brand new YouTube page. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe, click that little bell on YouTube so you know every time we post a video. Sean, how was your weekend?
Good weekend. Watching some baseball, continue to watch some baseball. And obviously it was a fun weekend out there. Just to have a couple days off. So it was a good weekend. How was yours?
It was excellent. Just had a little R&R, a little rest and relaxation. I'm sure just like the Saints players heading into week 3 of OTAs.
Absolutely. And look, before we get started, like Sil said, be sure to like, share, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's growing quite a bit. We are going to do our part by adding more and more videos to our weekly set of videos. We're still somewhat in our infancy, but we're getting to where we want to be slowly but surely. This is our third show in this new look, cozier new look here. Same building, same room, but no green screen, just a little more of a casual setting.
The chairs are more comfortable.
They are comfortable. They are. I'm kind of sinking in a little bit. I got to make sure I don't get too comfortable. I might take a nap or something like that. But look, as far as today, this will be the third week of OTAs for the Saints. We'll have an availability on Tuesday. Monday, obviously, is the day we're doing this podcast. And there are a couple of topics that are OTA related, but are not necessarily specific to the OTA of what we're actually seeing on the field. And I'm going to start with Jameis Winston. Still moves the needle, despite where he's at in his career, just at least in terms of the New Orleans Saints. I'll bring this up because, we spoke with him last week, and it was a typical Jameis Q&A. He was pretty open, pretty honest about where he is, where he currently stands. Still seems to have a really good, seems to be in a good place, headspace, mentally. It's not the easiest thing in the world, the situation that he is in. A guy that's been a starter his whole life, has been regulated to a backup position in the same spot where at one point he was the starter, where they basically brought in another guy to take his spot, I guess you could call it, in Derek Carr. And unlike any past situations of the last couple of seasons, there really is no path for Jameis to get back on the field short of a serious bombing out of Derek Carr and or injury, which no one wants. So for those reasons, he is an interesting topic. But I was on another show last week, and the discussion had popped up about the potential of trading Jameis Winston. So instead of going just one area with Jameis, why don't we just talk Jameis right now? Because I do think he's worthy of a worthy topic of conversation, especially at this point in June. I have said before, and I will say again, Jameis Winston as a starter has still never quite materialized into the number 1 overall pick status that he was back in 2015. When you draft a guy that high, franchise material, I think he had moments of that in Tampa, and he had a few moments here and there here in New Orleans, but I think we could all realistically say after 80 career starts, that has never materialized into a franchise elite quarterback. That's just reality. That's just reality. So as a starter, you're always going to be asking your question of, is this my guy? As a backup, I love this role. I absolutely love this role for Jameis Winston because, the pressure is now, I guess, off Jameis Winston. You always get the feeling that Jameis was a bit of a people pleaser and always wanting to live up to where he was. And I think sometimes that adds, undue burden, undue stress.
Trying too hard.
I think that's certainly, that's a legitimate observation of Jameis Winston's game. But as a backup, to me, I think he ascends to the top 3 or 4 backups in the NFL. He becomes now a high-end backup because the inconsistency throughout the 80 career starts he had before that, as a starter, that's frowned upon. But the fact that he has 80 career starts, he's still only 29 years old. People forget how young he is. He is still only 29 years old. He's just been through a lot, and he's been in the limelight for so long, and he's such a unique personality. He has such a unique game. He's had so many unique moments, both good and bad, that or just funny, that you don't – it feels like he's maybe a little bit older than that, but no, he's only 29 years old. He's not even 30 yet. So I think, though, a lot of life experience, a lot of NFL experience, been through a lot. And I think the need for high-end backups in the NFL, if we've learned nothing, not just with the Saints, but the entire NFL over the last couple of years, I mean, the value of those guys have skyrocketed. So to me, Jameis Winston holds great value as a high-end backup spot starter. We have discussed this role, this sort of category of quarterback many a times. Andy Dalton fell into it after quite a few years as a starter. It's a guy that I define in a tight window can give you quality football and keep your team afloat. When you expand that window a little bit, then the deficiencies come up and you don't necessarily end up with the product that you want. And usually, because of the position they play, wins and losses tend to suffer. So, in that aspect, I like where Jameis Winston is with the Saints. There is no, it does, at least from my eyes, I feel like he and Derek Carr have similar personalities, similar outgoing, good energy, fun guy personalities. So any talk or any feeling of any tension, because it's an awkward scenario, right? It's an awkward scenario. Guys here to take the guy just took my job.
Yeah, they just hired somebody to replace me. Yeah.
So, and look, that could have went another way. It didn't. He agreed to the restructured, I guess you'd call it a pay cut, to come back. So I think that speaks a lot of, that he is in a good spot. There is not going to be any tension, because why would he agree to all that stuff? If not, he could have just gone and been a backup somewhere else if that were indeed the case. So I do think that is certainly a good thing, and that's one thing you don't have to worry about. The question becomes, you have a guy with 80 career starts, and you look around the NFL, is it possible that Jameis Winston could get traded? Is it possible that the Saints would consider that?
Depends on how comfortable they are with Jake Haener.
That's part one. Jake Haener's development would be part one, because while Jameis is falling into a backup role, Haener is hoping to get to a backup role. That gap, however far that is, could determine a lot of this. The other thing is, frankly, another team's desperation.
That too.
Another team's desperation. If you're in a tight spot and you don't know what injuries are going to happen. Look at the Raiders right now with Jimmy Garoppolo. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you have a guy that's got 80 career starts who, regardless of what you might think from a total big picture or from a totality of his game standpoint, he has won games in the NFL. So if you're the Saints, I'm not sure they're picking up the phone and making calls. Hey, we got this guy, might be available. But if someone's calling you, maybe you listen. And then there's the bonus. You ready for the bonus?
Ready for the bonus.
Old number 7. There's the bonus. Because if all else fails, and let's just say, this is major hypothetical here, you went and made a deal with Jameis, DC got hurt, Jake Haener's not available. You still have number 7, who has Taysom Hill, who has come in and won games for you. And at that point in the season, it would be chaos anyway. So all of that to say, is that the craziest idea in the world? I just don't know if there's an urgency from the organization to do something like that. Now, if something were to materialize, you do what you have to do to pick up the phone and make the call, or not make the call, or take the call. But I still think the Saints like where they're at, and like the hierarchy of quarterbacks in their building right now. You have the established starter, no doubter, Derek Carr, which, by the way, I watched that Monday night game from last year. Was on NFL Network yesterday, the Chiefs and the Raiders. The Raiders lost that game, but that was not on Derek Carr. He played outstanding in that game, especially in the fourth quarter.
That was when he was dropping dimes to Devontae Adams.
And then there was they went for 2 and they should have tied it. It was crazy. But regardless, that's neither here nor there. But you have that. You have a guy in Jameis Winston who was once a starter, who is now can fall into the high-end backup, which that category has helped you win games before. Look what happened last year. Andy Dalton, he averaged out to be average, because that's basically where he's at in his career. But it could have been a lot worse.
It could have been.
It could have been a lot worse. You have the young rookie you're developing. in Jake Haener. Maybe he has a future as a 2, maybe not. But it all depends on where he's at in his development. And you got this bonus, this outlier, this unique skill set in Taysom Hill, who hasn't been out at OTAs, but he could, in a crazy pinch, if he had to start games for you, he could. So that's where I'm at with this Jameis Winston discussion, Jameis Winston situation. I still expect, until I hear otherwise, I fully expect him to be a New Orleans Saint in 2023. So what would you do? Where are you at in this discussion?
I mean, it's like Jameis said last week when he had his time in the locker room to speak to the media. He still believes that he can be a starting NFL quarterback.
As he should.
As he should. Yeah, no, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having confidence in yourself and your abilities. And, I mean, maybe it's not just one-sided for the Saints. Maybe Jameis believes that, I mean, if he truly does believe he can be a starter somewhere else, maybe he's having conversations with the Saints about moving.
That's a fantastic point. I didn't even think of that. He could be the one out there looking, hey, you know what? That could be available. Hey, you guys mind making a call? That could be available. I mean, I wouldn't have any problem with that.
No,
I mean the Saints probably wouldn't have any problem with that. Now, let me just say this: the Saints aren't just giving away for nothing.
Absolutely not.
You're going to get fair value for them in that situation. Again, we're a little further down the hypothetical thing here.
Yeah.
But what was also interesting is he's still pretty adamant that he's not 100% healthy.
Yeah, which I mean is a good or a bad thing depending on him. Just him being honest, depending on what you think.
It shows quite a few things. He was way more banged up than they let on last year. Even when he was quote-unquote healthy to come back, he wasn't really healthy to come back. If he's still talking about getting healthy well into the end of last season and into the offseason, we're already at OTAs. We're in minicamp next week.
Yeah.
So that's another factor as well. It's just something to talk. Look, Jameis is always a pretty good topic of conversation because there's so many layers that you can talk about with him. But the bottom line is he's here. He's made a few plays at OTAs. Hasn't been perfect, but I think overall you see the knowledge of the system, and obviously I think he's doing a pretty good job of communicating a lot of what he knows to Derek Carr, which you can say all the nice things in the world that this is no beef, this and that, but can you share the secrets? Can you share do you share what you know with the guy that just took your job? Then you know it's a good vibe. And I think right now he's in a good vibe and a good spot with the Saints and certainly Derek Carr and the entire quarterback room. All right, I'm okay with where the Saints are at quarterback. I think I've made that pretty clear.
Yeah.
I'm okay at some other spots. But as we sit here in June and we look at this roster and we project and we look and we say, you like where the Saints are, but no team is perfect and there are legitimate concerns. What could go wrong? What area, what deficiency could play itself out that could be the biggest detriment to the Saints winning? So take a little segue here. That is going to be, for me, it's a defensive line. There's been a lot of talk about the offensive line. I understand it. But when I look at the defensive line, you have Cam Jordan, and you don't know what else. Who else is going to emerge as a prominent player? You have 2 new free agents in Shepard and Saunders. You have a first-round pick in Brian Brzee, who I like. I want to see do well right away. But he's still a first-year player at a position where it's not always easy to transition right away. You have Malcolm Roach. You have Emili. You have a couple of other guys they signed after rookie minicamp tryouts. And then on the other side of Cam Jordan, it's that ever-rotating door of used to be Marcus Davenport, now he's gone. Peyton Turner, Carl Granderson, and now they bring in Isaiah Foskey. The second round pick out of Notre Dame. Who emerges, and if no one emerges to be better than, say, an average player, then I think collectively that takes its toll on your defense, which obviously takes its toll on your entire team, which impacts wins and losses. So right now, I am looking at the Saints defensive line as my biggest question mark in terms of this has got to come together. And if it does not, look no further than right there is the reason they fell short in 2023, because I feel like the defensive line is a little bit all over the place. Because if Brzee turns out to be a great player, instant impact player, awesome. Saunders, Shepard, the same thing. And if one of these guys, the opposite of Cam Jordan, can emerge, awesome. but I just named like 5 different players.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee of any of them. So I think that's something to look for. That's something to really watch going forward. By the way, we can't answer this question in OTAs.
No, because the pads aren't all on yet.
Pads aren't on. I'd be lying to you if I said, this guy looks great, this guy doesn't, based off of OTAs, just because the Saints have had a lot of offensive linemen missing, which is who the defensive linemen are going against, obviously, and B, like you said, there's no pads, and that question may not be answered until into the preseason, maybe not even into the regular season, before you really know just how good or how much of an upgrade or where are you at in terms of this defensive line. It's not so much if you break each player down individually, you like it, but the fact that you have so many unknowns in 3/4 of your offensive line, so much that has to come together, that is what concerns me. I will bring up the offensive line because that has been brought up as well. But here's the thing. I'm going to write down the stuff. I have it written down. You have Ramczyk, Ruiz, McCoy, Pete, and Trevor Penning. There has been issues with injuries, no doubt about it. The offensive line, that's where injuries occur. But as much as that could be a concern, the injuries, I am just higher on their depth than other people because you have James Hurst. You have Calvin Throckmorton, who started games for you. You have Landon Young, who has started games for you. And you have the 4th-round pick, Nick Saldiveri, who obviously I would assume is going to make this team, but a guy that they thought highly of, and a couple of other veterans that could potentially play the way as depth pieces as well. But I do think that's an issue. I think that's something to watch, the health of the offensive line. But when healthy, I'm confident in them, and I'm also more confident in the offensive line than the defensive line's depth at this point. So that's where I'm at in terms of biggest concern. The line of scrimmage is certainly something to watch, but for me, it's the defensive line. That has to come together for this team to fulfill its potential, which to me could be 11 or a 12-win team top end.
Yeah, I mean, I can't exactly choose the defensive line for myself, and I'm gonna kind of spice this up a little bit.
Let me see.
I'm gonna say safety is important for me because
Okay.
I still don't know what you're gonna get from Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu. While he had a solid second half of the season last season, he's not getting any younger. So I think you still are strong when it comes to defensive backs, as in your cornerbacks, but you just got to make sure that back end is solidified because without that back end help, your cornerbacks can only cover for so long.
Yeah, it's not a bad one.
No, it's not. It's not flashy. I mean,
it's not.
It's not game breaking.
I like that they returned their starters.
Yeah.
I like they added to the room. I like the secondary as a whole. I can understand, there's a few guys that you're counting on defensively that, hey, for all the time could catch them. We don't even know it. It's almost like we've been waiting for it to happen with Cam Jordan. It hasn't. DeMario's another one. He's 34 years old. And, Tyrann Mathieu's north of 30 as well. That's certainly something to monitor. So it's not a bad one. I'm going to stick with defensive line because there's so many new faces at a position group that has to come together, probably more than any other. So that's where I'm at with it. So I feel like it's going to be a good week. I want to see attendance-wise who's there because next week everyone will be there, obviously,
for
minicamp.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, this is a new part of it, and we're going to have a podcast on this in a couple days. We're into June now. The post-June 1st world is a significant world. So there could be some players that all of a sudden rise to the top in terms of attainable players for the Saints. We'll talk about some of those on our next pod. But for now, Sil, why don't you take us home?
All right. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review. Click that little the subscribe button right there. Hit the bell. You get notified whenever we upload a video. For Sean Fazan, I'm Vasilios. This has been the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. See you guys next time.